On Thursdays, we talk to Anne Lord Jackson about sensory health, how to thrive in your sensory health. And this led to a thought. So I've got a friend of mine, Rachel, who does sign language. We'll get into that a little bit more. But hello, Rachel.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Very well. Okay, just for the really basics, sign language. My very first question, is sign language like an international language? Or is it something where it changes between countries? Even are there dialects of sign language?
Yeah, totally. And that's one of the main questions that's always asked actually about sign language. It's not international. Each country has their own sign language. However, there is an international sign language that is more kind of, there's a lot of gestures involved. So like baby and drink. It is a bit more in depth than that. So I would not be able to understand somebody who was doing international sign language. So you still have to learn that language. But every country has their own sign language. And also, like you say, there are regional dialects as well. So even down to numbers, you can tell where somebody has been, where someone's grown up, where someone's learnt sign language, depending on what numbers they do. So there's like 16. Scotland's have their own very specific sign language and number system. So there's all the regional dialects, and like for the sign purple, I think there's probably about 50 different signs for the word purple.
Wow.
Across the UK, so it does vary hugely, and also the way that people sign. So, for example, if you've got a hearing person speaking, you've got a young person compared to an older person, they would speak very differently, wouldn't they? And it's the same with the deaf community. An elderly person will sign very differently to a younger person. And traditionally, a lot of the elderly people would do a lot of finger spelling. So I used to be a social worker, as you know, and a lot of, when I was doing social work, a lot of the elderly people would just finger spell everything. So you'd be there trying to get what they, like every letter. And at the end of the appointment, we'd be like, oh, my brain's just dead. So I can't. I've been trying to keep up with all this finger spelling. It's really so even between generations, they sign very differently. So yeah.
Cool. And I guess as people get older, some of our dexterity is going to diminish. So some of the signs we might have been easily able to do all of a sudden is going to get more complex. And I guess you've got to work with that as well.
You don't find that so much within the deaf community, only if there's been something like if they've had a stroke or something like that has taken away their ability, but just general decline through age, because I think they're using their hands all the time. The diminishing in dexterity kind of is less with deaf people.
And there's a good reason to keep using your hands properly.
Absolutely, definitely.
Exercise it or lose it. How did you get into sign language? There's got to be a story and a journey. Okay, we've known each other for a little while, but how did you get into a little while? How did you get into? Oh, I could do sign language. I mean, how did that first light bulb moment? Where's that come from?
Well, it kind of happened by accident. I mean, I've always loved languages. I love learning spoken languages as well. And where I grew up, when I was about 16, somebody came to church who was deaf, and I thought, I can't communicate with you. I'd better go and try and learn something so I can communicate with you. So I just went to the local library and got a book out and learnt some signs, and thought, I really like doing this. And at the time I was thinking about what next after A-levels, and decided to try and do a deaf studies course, which they do at Wolverhampton, obviously, which is where we met.
Yeah.
So went to Wolverhampton, and I'd applied for like a major and a minor degree. So the deaf studies was the minor bit, but I loved it so much I switched it over and did most of my degree in deaf studies, and we learned a lot of theory and sign language as well. And then I left and kind of thought, I can't actually do a heck of a lot with my degree. I better do something else. So then I decided to go into social work. So I worked with the deaf community in social work for a number of years, and then and left and became an interpreter. I qualified as an interpreter.
Wow. Okay. I actually didn't know about the social work part. I knew it was social working, not social work. That was cool. Didn't know that.
What did you know?
No, well, I knew you were involved in social work, but not necessarily as a social worker.
Okay. That was in Wolverhampton. I started it when I was Yeah, just before we were married. So, yeah, just when we were in Wolverhampton. So, and then and that was, I worked in Birmingham, the deaf community in Birmingham for quite a long time. Yeah.
With when our boys were born, I was involved in the Sure Start Centre after Stephen was born, and I thought, okay, this Makaton thing came up as a conversation, so I thought, this sounds interesting. So I started to do a little bit of Makaton, and what struck me was, okay, it's very simplified language, but I was able to talk with the children before we could speak to each other, which was phenomenally powerful. What do you know any of the history about Makaton? I mean, I sort of barely remember any of it, but it was kind of cool that I could talk before we could speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Makaton and baby sign that you can do when babies are very little, and they do learn to sign. They can pick up signs before they can pick up words. So I remember trying to sign with my children. I remember Beth lying in the cot just kind of signing this to me, like milk, milk. She was just crying, going, ah. So I knew exactly, she wouldn't have been able to say that to me, but I just knew what she was meaning. I don't know so much the history of Makaton, only that it's more of a signing system for children with communication difficulties, whatever that presents as. It's not a language. So there's no grammatical structure, or there's no kind of things that you need to have for a language. It is more of a communication tool, but very useful communication tool. And I did some signs with Esther when she was little, because she used to have reflex anoxic seizures, which knocked her out quite a lot. And she suddenly stopped talking after one of them for probably about 9 months. She would start. Wow. She started to talk and then just suddenly stopped. So I signed with her, and that's the way we communicated, which was brilliant. So yeah, she'd be there just going like, or whatever she wanted, she would just sign to me, and then the childminder would say to me, "I don't know what she's trying to say to me." So then I was teaching the childminder some signs, which is really good. So yeah,
that's really cool.
It's really useful. Really useful.
Have you had any moments? I mean, we'll come back onto the signing stuff now, but when you're in social work, have you got any moments where you could see someone thinking, "I can't communicate to you," and you're walking in the room, and then there's a moment of, I suppose, a relief that we actually can communicate. I've got someone to talk to. It must be really hard.
There was one very funny incident. Alex and I were raising money for Hope for Justice, and we were doing an abseil off the Holiday Inn in Birmingham.
As you do.
And as you do. And we got there, and there was a deaf man there also doing this abseil, and they were doing a safety briefing, and obviously he couldn't access his safety briefing because he was deaf. So I said, "It's fine, I'll interpret this for you." And the look of, "Oh my goodness, that's incredible." So that was one lovely moment. That was, yeah, I always remember that.
Probably quite and a useful one as well, if you're about to come off at the top of a tower. Yes, that's a safety briefing you want to get right.
Yes, exactly. Don't go yet. You can go now. Yes, exactly.
What was that?
Very useful. Yeah.
So you do signing work now. So what is it you do? What are your days spent doing?
So that's one of the things I absolutely love, because every day is different. I do have a couple of regular bookings, though. I'll do some university work, which is amazing because I do so many different university courses and have done. So I kind of get paid to learn, which is incredible. Yeah, and just done so many different subjects. And I did some theology. I've done some theology, which was like my dream job. It was incredible. Just learning. And the only problem is you're obviously not allowed to get involved. And when people are saying stuff, it took all my effort just to not go, "Yeah, but what about this?" Or, "Can I just clarify? What do you mean by that? And what do you think about this?" It's so hard when you really love a subject that you're interpreting for. That's really tricky. But yeah, so I do quite a lot of university work, and then a lot of medical bookings, so community interpreting, which I really love, because then you can go and meet people before their appointments and have a chat with them. Sometimes it's a long chat because it's a long wait for appointments, as you know. And so that's a real privilege, because you meet some fascinating people who have had amazing stories and just do amazing things. And that's lovely. I love meeting people, and I also meet people that I used to work with as a social worker as well. So it's lovely seeing them like 15 years on or whatever. So that's really good. And then just some online training and just very random stuff sometimes comes in. And so I've done I live very close to the NEC, so you get a lot of bookings at the NEC for different shows and fairs and things there. So yeah, so I did Comic-Con recently. That was like entering another world. It was
I can imagine.
I'd never been before, and then having to interpret all these different like anime shows or whatever it was. It was a very challenging linguistically, but just incredible to see all these costumes and unbelievable. Yeah. So just very random ones as well.
I can imagine
every day's different.
Well, exactly. I can imagine at Comic-Con, there are some words where you're thinking, could you just say that again?
Yeah, exactly. But everybody knew, because there were all these shows that they're really into. And obviously as a newcomer, you can't know everything about every show. So there were loads of in-jokes. So they would say something that just didn't make sense and everybody would be laughing. And we'd be there kind of going, I don't know what the in-joke is. So it's difficult to interpret something that you don't understand. So you just had to kind of wing it and do your best, really. But that was an interesting one.
Okay, so how have you become fluent in sign language? I remember when I was not doing very well at learning French at school, the teacher said the best way is to immerse yourself so that all you can speak is French, and then you'll learn to speak French better, which makes sense. Never got to do that. But how did you become fluent sufficiently that you could think, yeah, I can actually do this situation? Did you immerse yourself in that way, or was there just lots and lots of practice?
Well, both really. Obviously I meet loads of deaf people every day. And then as a social worker, I was working with a load of, I was working in a deaf organisation, so there was a lot of deaf people working there. So, it's just immersion really. And then because you pick up all the slang as well that you don't necessarily learn in a structured, classroom environment. So you just pick up, you need to be able to pick up all that slang. So then when you're interpreting it, you think, I know what that means because I've seen that somewhere else. So yeah, immersion definitely is the best way. And there's deaf churches around. The one in Birmingham has unfortunately stopped now, but so I used to go and go there and help out with the kids' work in that church as well. So yeah, just immersion is good.
You said that at 16 you're in church, you met somebody who you realised, I can't actually speak with this person, so I need to find another way of communicating. Where does faith sit with your ability to sign?
In terms of...
Well, I don't know, because I think about being the hands and feet in the Bible. You're literally being the hands for somebody to be able to communicate with the world, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't see it like that. It's very interesting because for me, it comes out of a love of language and a love of people. So I love working with people. And if I wasn't doing this job, I would be doing something else working with people. So this is kind of combining the two. It's not like specifically you're deaf and you need help to communicate and I'm that person, because that kind of creates that power imbalance in some respects. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it's combining my love of language and my love of people into one amazing job, which I absolutely love. So I think, like in my job, my faith comes into it because, for example, if I go into an appointment, particularly maybe some medical appointments that are going to be difficult for the person, or if they're in a situation and I know that it's difficult, I can pray for them when I'm in the appointment or before going into the appointment. I'll pray, not with them, obviously, because I'm not allowed to do that, but I will, in my own head, I will pray for them. And as they go away as well, I'll pray for, whatever's to come for them. So kind of my faith plays out in the situation in that sense, if you see what I mean.
No, I don't. I just like to ask questions because I realise, okay, the way I'm thinking isn't necessarily the right way, or it's different from someone else, and I love that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it's I think probably historically that was where, and a lot of people do say, oh, it must be really rewarding. And it is, but perhaps not in the same way as you might expect, I would say. Because a lot, I don't think deaf people would like that notion either of, oh, you really feel like you're helping me. Because I mean, it comes out of like with the model of disability. So you've got the medical model. I've got a hearing loss and I need fixing. The medical professional trying to fix me. There's something wrong with me, which is obviously, to feel that is not nice. Or there's the social model where society disables you because you can't communicate with me. So therefore you need to learn sign language. And if you learn sign language, there would be no barriers. We'd all be able to just kind of bumble along together. And then there's the cultural model of disability, of deafness, which a lot of deaf people will assign to. And it's more that we're a linguistic minority, we have a culture, we're deaf, and there is a really strong deaf identity. And most deaf people who are perhaps born deaf or became deaf at a very young age and have learnt sign language, and that's their primary first language, they would consider themselves to be culturally deaf. So they have their community, they have their identity, they have their language. So you've got those three that play out. So it's more the cultural side of disability, deafness, that I would probably rely on to, because that's where deaf people would naturally sit themselves. So yeah.
Which is fascinating, because I would never have considered. No, it does. I'd have never considered that, though. That wouldn't be something that would be a conscious thought for me.
Yeah, no, it is good to kind of think about the whole range of perspectives, really, because people do ask that a lot, and I love the language side, and I love the challenge of, when you go into a situation where I think I've got no idea about this subject. So I interpreted on a computer science course. I mean, the language of computer science in English, I'm sure is not English. It's just completely beyond me. So then to have to interpret that into BSL. So I came out feeling, I'm not sure I've done a great job, but it was really challenging. And I love the challenge of having to work in a second language, interpreting that information. And hopefully the deaf person at the other end got something out of it and understood it, because obviously it's their course that they're doing and then they need to pass. So I love the linguistic challenge of it, but it's less so, oh, I feel like I've really helped you today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. And that's comes out in the way you're talking. But again, every day is learning day. One of the things I love about doing interviews is I like to be challenged on what I think, because who was it? There was a minister at something in Oxford, like debates thing, and someone says, "Oh, religion, faith can't be real." And this guy drew a massive circle on the board and said, "Okay, so how much of this huge circle would you say how much you've got intelligence, you've got intellect? How much?" And he drew this little dot, and he said, "Well, if you only know this little tiny piece of this bigger circle, then you can't know everything, can you? Therefore, you can't say what isn't, because there's so much you don't yet know." And that's what I love, is I didn't have any concept of that about the deaf community. I knew it was a community, but I would never put it into the words of culture, because it wouldn't be something that I would think, because it's not a community I spend time with, whereas you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, deaf culture some of it is actually quite different from hearing culture, and it's just simple things like deaf people can be very direct in what they say to you. So I remember when I was pregnant with Beth, I went to see I was the social worker at the time, and I went to meet one of my clients, and she said, "Oh yeah, you're pregnant. Your face has got really fat." I went, "Thank you very much." And that's like just the directness that often deaf people would talk to you. And some sign language, everybody has a sign name. So one of my colleagues I used to work with, was their sign name was that, because everyone said she had a big pointy nose. And deaf culture is just very blunt and very direct. And so as a hearing person, you kind of go, oh, and then you just think, it's deaf culture, it's fine, it's deaf culture. And then like if we would if we tap somebody's arm to get their attention, we think, gosh, that's very rude, but that's how you do it as a deaf person. Or, like wave your arm, or just tap them on the shoulder. And so it's just very different culture as well. So, yeah.
I remember years and years ago learning about some people who worked in Russia. They'd come back to the UK to try and get some money for some charitable thing. They wanted a computer. And so this organization said, here's the money, here is a computer. I mean, this is like early 90s, so computers were very expensive. And then they said, we need a printer. And the person that was working with them said, God, they didn't say please. How rude. And someone had to say, there is no word for please. They can't say, please, can we have a computer? Because they wouldn't be structured that way. What they would say is, need a computer. So it's not rudeness. It's just it's a different culture, different language. So it's not rude. It's a different language. It's different people.
Absolutely, yeah, totally, yeah. And it's just understanding that, isn't it?
It is. And every day is a learning day. It's a phrase I use a lot because there's always something new to learn. And I'm feeling challenged about my attitude towards the deaf culture because I didn't think that there was one. That makes sense because I'm not in that community.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's really interesting actually, and it's a very strong community. So, probably about 15, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, maybe, when cochlear implants, about cochlear implants, when they first kind of came into the market, really, there was a massive backlash against from the deaf community, saying you're trying to take away our deaf culture, our language, you're trying to fix us and make us into hearing people. So there was a big backlash. I mean, it's come a long way and people are more accepting of that now. So most deaf children will have cochlear implants, but because it was a threat to their community for a long time, people were like, no, thank you, we don't want them. It's quite interesting.
I can understand that. It's like you're trying to fix us, and we are who we are.
Totally.
That makes sense to me. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself sometimes talking and then your hands just start to sign when they're not necessarily needing to?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Or sometimes when you're in a really loud environment, you just think, oh, I wish everyone around me could sign. Or like at the weekend, my throat was getting really sore and I thought, I just need to stop talking now. If only you could all sign. That would be brilliant. Yeah.
No, I can understand that as well. That would be good, wouldn't it, if we all could do that? But there are limits to what every one of us can do, and we have to. I think what I enjoy talking to you is that you love what you do, and that comes out through what you do and how you talk about that community, that culture feel. I remember once we were sitting at a country park somewhere, and we were sitting having our lunch, and there were loads of people talking. And it kind of felt odd, and it was quite shocking because I couldn't work out what was wrong at this table. Terrible, isn't it? And they were signing, and for ages I was thinking, I can't hear any noise from that table, and I couldn't for some reason work out what was going on with the hands. I just saw silence, if that makes sense, and it was really odd. It took me ages to think, no, they're signing. It's fine. It's not as weird as my brain just couldn't hook those two things together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's. I know you said that, not everyone can sign, but everybody can. If you meet a deaf person, the best thing is just to have a go and just do some gestures. There's somebody next door to us. We've got supported living accommodation, and there's actually a deaf chap that lives there, and somebody that I know from long ago works there, and he sometimes pops in. And he'll try talking to Alex and signing to Alex. And Alex is he tries to communicate in a very, very bad way. And last time he was here, this chap, Philip, he just said, oh, he's strongly oral. He said he's refusing to do any gestures. And that's just it. It's just having a go. And if you just try and if you think, like if a person came and you were just, you don't try and think of a sign language, obviously, but just try and think of a gesture just to support what you're saying. And that will go a long way to helping communication. Even simple gestures will really, really help. Like I was in a hospital appointment last week and I was there, and actually the nurse didn't need me at that point because she was trying to explain to somebody how to put on their gowns for an operation. So she was like, 2 gowns, one that way, one that way. brilliant. And then shorts. So she was just gesturing and he got it completely. So if you ever meet a deaf person, just do a few gestures and see how you get on. Don't worry about it. Just try the best you can do.
Do what you can with what you have when you can.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Rachel, thank you so much. We said we've known each other for a long time. It's sort of nearly 3 decades.
Don't go into numbers.
No, it's fine. But it's been a pleasure to talk to you about some parts of your life that we wouldn't ordinarily speak about. And so it's been fascinating to learn. I didn't actually know you were a social worker. I knew you were involved in social work, but it sort of makes sense. And it's been interesting to learn about deaf culture because it's just not something that I come across. Therefore, it's not something I think about. Therefore, I don't know. And I love to learn.
Well, it's just good to raise awareness as well to everyone listening. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and we can all do something with gestures. Rachel, thank you so much. I've loved this.
Pleasure. Thank you. Yeah,
I love learning.
I have as well. It's been good.
Good. Cool. Well, thank you. How can people find someone to sign whatever project they've got going on? Is there somewhere they can go so they can, I don't know, hire a sign language person?
The best place is there's the Deaf Interpreters Network. So do you mean if somebody has something that they need interpreting into BSL? Yeah. So there's the best place is actually the Deaf Interpreters Network. So there's a network of deaf people that will do deaf interpreting now, and they're the best people to do that. And you can find that on the NRCPD website. There's a list of deaf interpreters. So that would be, but for a normal kind of regular sign language job, there's the hearing interpreters, which is also on the NRCPD website. There's a national register,
which we will link to in our comments on the video and the podcast later. Rachel, thank you so much for your time. I have a passion for learning. I spend every week chatting to a doctor and to an occupational therapist who specializes in sensory needs, and I love learning new stuff, which I didn't know. I'm not very good at necessarily, saying it again, but I love learning. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Rachel.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks ever so much, Andy. You take care.
Cheers.
Pure 24/7 radio is listener supported, which means we are free, online and always pure because of the generous support of our listeners. If you would like to contribute financially, please visit pure247radio.org. If you'd like to find out how we use your money, please visit the Our Cost section. Any donation of any size will help keep us on air and broadcasting for free. Thank you.